but for now.
Oh, okay, it's for my turn.
Okay. Okay. In the absence of our current chair, who is now Jaleesa, I'll start the meeting and then we need to kind of vote on a vice chair to run the meetings while Jaleesa is on maternity leave. But to start with tonight is the Board of Zoning Appeals public hearing for Wednesday, July 8th, 2026. It's just after 6 p.m. I guess, is there a motion on a vice chair? Or any discussion, or I think the idea is just that Jaleesa, I think, has said she expects to be back in the fall. Yeah.
September is what we're doing.
And she will take over at that point, running the meetings, signing decisions and stuff like that. It was just chair, I don't mind, taking care of things, but if you wanted to, but I also know you just have a ton of new responsibilities as well, starting tomorrow. You wanted to, but you also have a baby anytime.
I'm gonna come back.
But I guess that's kind of the quick discussions. I don't think we've heard anything on a fifth board member yet. So those are kind of,
I mean, I feel like I need to get through the winter.
Yeah.
And then I would definitely consider it, like.
And I think we can reconsider at any time.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I guess we can turn around as babies come.
That's what I was like thinking. I'm like, we're all gonna be scheduling it.
So I think, so anyway, I don't know if someone could make a motion to nominate Adriana as vice chair.
I move to nominate Adriana as vice chair.
Second?
Second?
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Okay, with that order of business out of the way, there is one big project tonight on the agenda, and that's it, with multiple variances. Is it 5? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 6 variances. Project, there's no more project number.
I know, we can very.
Okay, I think that's fair. Area variances range from 2026-6 to -12. The property address, there's a couple of different properties, 307, or 295, 297, 299, 301, 305, 307 Hamilton Street. The applicant is RM Hamilton LC, represented by Sophia Lane from Taylor Riley Wilson Architect and Preservation. The zoning district is mixed use neighborhood edge, and the proposal is a conversion from office space to previous residential apartment configuration with proposed dwelling unit ratio of 1 unit per 475 to 490 square feet. GFA where 1 unit per 750 square feet GFA is required in the MUNE district, the district in question. The applicant is here tonight, and so we'll hear your presentation. Please come on up.
Okay, so Sophia wasn't able to come. We have another city hearing in a different municipality at the same time. So she took that, and I'm taking this. My name's Dan Wilson, I'm a partner at Taylor Riley Wilson Architecture and Preservation. And I don't know, we submitted a PowerPoint presentation. I don't know if that was, brought up. There you go. So if you're not familiar, these are the buildings that are on Hamilton Street, except for 303. We don't have, our client doesn't have possession of that. So it's the it's two buildings on the other side of 305, 303, and the 4 buildings on the other side. So currently, all the buildings are either vacant office space, soon to be vacant office space, and then some of the basements are either office or commercial spaces. The applicant is looking to renovate the buildings and have apartments, one apartment on each floor of each building. Due to the nature of the buildings, them being quite small, it comes out to be a mixture of about 9 studios and 12 one-bedroom apartments in this block. All the parking for the residents will be in the back because they will own the parking spots. Same thing with like all the dumpsters and stuff like that. And since some of these buildings are quite small, the studios range from 350 to 470 square feet, depending on each building, and the one bedrooms range from 560 to 780 square feet. They are also going to be doing this as most like a historic tax credit project, so we're being very sensitive about the historic fabric of the building and trying to actually, some of these buildings were, the floors were all connected to be one big office space. We're trying to go back to the original townhouse, row house look as part of that. That makes sense. So that's kind of what we have. I don't know if we provided floor plans, the preliminary floor plans. I have a set here.
Not in the park.
No, okay. I don't know if it was part of the application.
We do have them digitally, it just wasn't.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So that's basic. I don't know if anyone's any questions.
Is that the floor plan?
Yeah, do you want to go with that?
Do you have any renderings of what the facade would look like?
It's in the package with their photographs because we're not changing the facades.
Okay.
All we're doing is, there's some windows that have to be replaced only because they are vinyl in bad shape, because we also know all the historic requirements. And then there's some back windows that need to be replaced in the parking lot side because they're in bad shape. But essentially, we're not doing anything to the exterior.
I mean, I personally love density, so this is like a great project, my personal opinion. But what was the minimum square footage? I just want you to repeat that for me. What was the smallest apartment?
A studio, there's one apartment that's 350, and that's a studio. And that was on the second floor over room 299. Most of them range in the 400 range with studios, and most of them range in the 500 to 600 range for the one bedroom.
Okay, oh, thank you.
Yeah, the idea on this is also one of the big clients that, for the applicant is people who work at the government center, and this is their second house that they're renting it for the legislative
I
session.
think it would be like a pied a terre. Okay.
Yeah. But they don't want a big space
50
necessarily.
is really small, but if they're there for the night.
Yeah, and then again, it's a limitation of that one building.
So when you
Two
get
buildings,
the,
right?
What's that?
There's 2 buildings that are shorter, is that?
Yeah, and that's
295.
295 and 297. For some reason, the second floor is significantly smaller. I'm not really sure why. And then 299 has a small unit too for some on the second floor, just the way the layouts.
when you give the square footage for the studios, are you including the bathroom or just the?
It's included everything that's within the unit, but it's not including common space like the stairs and stuff like that that are served by the entire, that for use for the whole building. And actually in that plan, we show what each floor plate square footage is, and then what each unit square footage is. Yeah, there you go. These break it up by each different
And
parts.
so just confirming, you're doing 1 apartment per floor, you're not splitting any floors into
No.
apartments.
Yeah, we actually did look at duplexes for some of those smaller ones, but the economics don't work on what they would have to charge for a a duplex, and B, the margins in the work for the client. The 21 unit total is right where it needs to be.
Yeah, I was curious, I'm like at 350, you might as well just kind of gobble it up for, like, as a duplex, but okay. I kind of.
And we didn't go that far. We were just looking at those small buildings, of saying, taking all the small buildings and turning them into duplexes or townhouses, and that didn't work. Maybe in the end, they do decide to do that for that one that's really small. I'm not sure.
And these will be purely rentals, or would these actually be for sale?
These are rentals.
Because they will.
They are
rentals.
apartments, yeah.
There's less floors on 297 and 95, is that correct?
Yep.
There's one less?
Yep.
Oh,
It drops off.
okay. Or there's, I guess, a third floor for 3 of them.
Right, so 295 and 297 have a basement and 2 floors. 299, 301, and 305 have a basement and 3 floors, and 307. 305 is basement and 2 floors.
Oh, and it's not the full row, there's one property in the middle.
Yeah, the middle,
of them.
they do not own, it's not for sale.
Okay.
I think that's a single family house, if I remember correctly.
Have you been in touch with the neighborhood association and maybe with the neighbors, notably that property?
No, we haven't, partly because the client is or the applicant is currently going through their due diligence. They don't own the property yet, and this is one of the first steps they're going through on that due diligence process.
I didn't have a chance to read the public comment that was sent this afternoon, that we got this afternoon. I'm pulling it up now. Yeah, and that was from, who sent that?
I believe the gentleman signed up to speak as well, so.
Yep.
Oh, that may have been the one I sent.
Okay.
Felton McLaughlin, is that?
Yeah.
Okay.
So we can get to that later. Okay. Sorry, I'm still looking kind of at the plans. and
Sure.
stuff.
And those aren't carved in stone. It was just the initial thing to show how we can lay it out, see how what works, what doesn't work.
What is the timeline, the desired timeline, if this were approved going forward, do you know what the timeline is?
I don't know specifically, because like I said, we're going through due diligence, and who knows how long it takes to close. It's a pretty big deal on closing this. The one thing the client is, and the potential owner is interested in, is harnessing historic tax credits to do this work. That always stands the project out, because you have to go through the multi-step process for that. They might rule it out if it becomes too expensive, because time is money, so that's the big unknown on how quickly this can move. But from a standpoint of renovations, we don't think there's a huge amount of renovations. A lot of it's cosmetic. We got the bathrooms and kitchens in, but we're trying to maintain as much as the original fabric. So other than the fact that it's a lot of tick-tacky stuff, I don't think it's gonna take a huge amount of time. to actually do it.
And can you speak to how the proposed project, I guess, I think I read, and I think there's been mention that like, I guess, takes, I guess that going to this, each floor unit is taking the properties back to how it was used before, we think?
Oh, well, we don't know. All we're saying is they originally were residential, and then at some point, the big chunk of them, on every floor, they were combined. The buildings were combined as one big office place. We're going back to putting them back as individual buildings. What I can say, and you know this from this downtown Albany, there was this period of time where people hacked up all of the townhouses into small apartments. Maybe that was the case, I hope, but we don't know because it's all been turned to big office plates. All we're saying is we're going back to the townhouses and we're putting in apartments in each level.
Okay. So potential, so it was residential, but there's a high likelihood, I would say, that initially they were one family.
Oh, no, I'm almost certain they were townhouses, one family.
Initially, and
Initially.
then got split up and.
If I was to guess, without doing research, they got hacked up into tiny little apartments in the 70s and stuff like most of the buildings in that area were, so.
And then which ones are the ones that are currently connected?
You know what, if you go in there, it's really difficult, you get lost in what building you are in and stuff like that. So I believe it's the ones that are, the two that are.
Actually, Dan, I could answer that.
Oh,
if
do you?
that's of any assistance. I am actually the listing broker for this property. It's buildings 295 through 301, the four, to the left of Machismo Cheesecake, all right, that have the connecting floors. I mean, you walk through it, there's no office tenant that's gonna lease that space as it is in today's.
It was a dentist office, wasn't it, or something?
There was a dentist office.
Because the stuff's still there, yeah, so.
We tend to have a bad issue with people not clearing snow or sleet. I know like these are just words, but like I know we can't sign like, will you promise, but who would be in charge of snow removal, spreading salt, especially that's on a hill, you have all these state workers, 5 days a week. We grow by over 100,000 residents, 5 days a week throughout the entire year. So to make sure that like the people going to state campuses will be able to have safe egress
Right.
to the offices.
I can't speak to that, but, I'm assuming that the applicant would have a property maintenance
He
people. if they're not doing
owns
it
multiple
themselves.
buildings in the city.
Just want to make sure, we have a lot of landlords that own a lot of properties that do not.
I know, because I walk through the snow
the
in
snow.
front of their buildings.
Yeah, we all of us
Yeah.
deal with it. And so I just want to be like, are they going to be responsible, and are they really going to hire somebody who's going to really actually do the proper maintenance?
And the plan, I guess to that, like, the current plan is, he doesn't own, the applicant doesn't own the properties yet?
Nope, going through due diligence, and one of the reasons was since we had to go through this, wants to make sure that before he closes on the property, that what his limitations are and stuff like that.
Interesting. And so the proposed plan currently is to rent all of the units.
Yep.
Not to sell the properties afterwards.
Not that I know of, yep.
Okay.
One of the reasons is if he does historic tax credits, then everything has to be locked in for 5 years after completion anyways, so.
In preparation of this, can you speak a little bit, just kind of going through the characters of the neighborhood, especially on this, I think focusing on the smallest units, have you been able to find examples of other, I mean, there are other weirdly shaped buildings in the neighborhood, I'm sure, with like small, small decks and stuff like that. Have you been able to find examples of small units like that?
No, but I did used to live in the neighborhood for a long time and know of places like that. I can't speak of them specifically. In fact, I used to own 83 Dunn Street, and I rented the first floor. It was one of the bigger ones. It was a 2-bedroom though, but it still was pretty small. I know that it's not an anomaly in downtown Albany, yeah.
I think that'd be helpful to supplement the record, if for the next meeting, you guys could provide examples of like, I mean, I would agree with you that I think it's probably not impossible. Probably likely, I don't know, planning looked, if there are similar units sized.
Public tax records show age, and it's hard to tell how accurate it is, but it shows square footage often, but it won't, and we could go through, records on how many units, but we wouldn't be able to say.
I feel like
what square
you'd
footage
have
per
to be
floor.
looking at rental listings in the neighborhood, to kind of see, like looking for the studio rental listings and see if there are comparable ones. I think that'd be important for the, to complete the application regarding the criteria that we need to consider for the
Now,
various.
is that
like,
because, we say in the application that typical rules of thumb for studios range between 400 and 500 square feet, just across the board. And in one bedrooms, I forgot what the number is, it's like 500 to 750 or whatever. Are we talking about all ones that are under 750 or just the ones that are particularly small, like the
I would
studios?
focus on the smallest, but
Like
with
the
the
350.
rest of the board things, but I think it'd be important to, especially focusing on the smallest ones, on the two that are at around 350. If you are able to find examples that are also under the 400 mark, I think that'd be very helpful.
Some might predate zoning of what we currently have too. Be interesting to
Yeah.
know.
Oh, yeah, I mean,
Like
no,
really big old
anything
apartments
that
that
we're
were split
talking
up
about is
a long time ago.
old stuff, I'm sure it's grandfathered.
That's my
Yeah.
assumption.
Am I allowed to say anything?
Yeah,
Should I wait until?
Yeah, let's wait
Okay.
until public comment at this point, but thank you for pitching in. Yeah, just like kind of going back over, refreshing my memory on like, the response currently provided for the character of the neighborhood. I personally think that you need to kind of get deeper into the criteria and focus on the smaller units.
So can you repeat the
Like,
first part?
I think, like, looking at like what you've submitted so far in the application, I think in the information you provided on character of the neighborhood is high level about the buildings and doesn't get to the core issue of the smallest units. So, just repeating again what I've been saying for 2 minutes.
Okay. And just so you know, when I was just looking at, I have a list, so it's a little easier to understand. There's only 2 units that are under the 400 square
Yes,
feet and out of the 21 units, so.
Yeah, which 2 units are those?
Is the second floor of 295 and the second floor of 299.
For some reason I have on this, but maybe we have a typo, maybe we can just
This is that.
confirm.
I think the staff report has a typo,
Okay,
it's just the 3rd floor. So it's
like, yeah,
ground
on the
floor, second
staffing,
floor.
it says 3rd floor unit for 299, so you're saying that's 2nd floor? Wait, sorry, say that again. Sorry,
It depends if sometimes people call the ground floor unit as one unit, and then, so I think it's a nomenclature thing.
So there's ground floor, second floor, okay,
First.
so tell me again which ones are, like, which
Well, I guess
ones
we have
are
to be
the-
clear, what do we want to call the basement or ground floor? Because, so,
Ground floor works. for
okay,
me.
so in that case, I have it down as a second floor of 299. And there's a floor above it.
So you have ground floor, second floor,
Ground floor, first floor, second floor, and a third floor in that.
yeah, so I guess there's, the first floor is missing in the staff report, so I think it's just, the second floor should be first floor, and then the
You know,
third floor
and
should be second floor.
the reason why the second floor is smaller, it has to do with the existing stair arrangement, if you look at the floor plans. So it's an anomaly that,
295 ground floor,
and we're gonna talk about 299. We gotta keep.
299.
and this is the next floor.
Yeah.
And then that's the floor after.
And then-
Wait, 299 is
So
the
keep
one we're
going,
looking
get to
at.
299, you have to go way, no, you have to keep on going. Oh, those are different files.
Yeah, sorry.
But you know what, if you can kind of read it,
Yeah.
it's just grade. So,
Yeah, so this one's the 350.
yeah, and you see
Right.
how big the stair is because how it wraps around. It's not a switch stair like some of them. It's the stair eats up a good portion of that unit. It's just one of the anomalies of just how the existing layout is.
Would any of these have HVAC, considering it's gonna be 90 degrees tomorrow?
The system is garbage, and it's all gonna be taken out, and they're probably gonna be doing electric heat pumps. So that each one has individual control on the units.
Wait,
And-
so just going back, and then at 295, it's also the second floor.
Yep, and that was at 395.
Okay.
So we said that was 395?
Yep, 295 second floor, studios 395, a lot of numbers.
And then,
299 second floor is
Has it
350.
each of the floors have that.
okay, and then what about 297?
297, they all are above 400 square feet for studios in that one. And typically that is an okay size for a studio. It doesn't meet the zoning requirement of 750 per unit, but that's not a bad size for a studio.
So it looks like 10, 11, and 12 are the biggest, require the biggest variance in terms of size, right? So if you look, area variance project 2026, number 10, right? 299 Hamilton Street. Is it 578.75 square feet, where one unit is 750 square feet?
Right, the one basement bedroom unit is 750 square feet because there's an existing addition, so it's much larger than the rest of the building. The rest of the building, the floor plate's around 400 square feet. The other floors above the basement.
Right, it's an average, so that's why it's showing up as the average of all floors together. So that's the reason.
Okay, the 578 is the average?
Yeah, so basically you take all the floors, and you divide it by the units, and that's what it comes out to be, so it's a little, it's a little kind of, not really telling the whole picture, I think, yeah. Because you could have a couple big floors, and then,
Where's that, recommendation, where's that, whenever you're ready to do that?
Yeah, so wait, so thinking about that, so just thinking through, and I guess I'm just realizing that there are 21 units, and there are 6 variances because there are 6 buildings. So it's a variance per building, not per unit.
True, yep.
So the relief you'll be, the relief they're requesting is higher than the lowest square footage. The lowest they're looking for is 43 and 40.
But so the code requirement and you put the, and I'm sorry, can you pull up the code thing with the 750? Just let me read that again, because if the,
In the slide or the.
if it,
Yeah. It's the way it's interpreted is that it's an average, not per unit. That's how we interpret it. 'Cause some zoning districts have it as 650, some have it as 2 building.
Yeah, this is
some
it right
are
here.
NA not applicable.
This is one dwelling unit per 750 square feet gross floor area.
do you mind pulling up this code? If that's what you're doing?
Yeah.
Okay. I just want to take a look at it. But you're saying that how planning has been doing it across the board, across the city, is doing it with the average of all the floors for a building, and not looking at each unit,
Correct.
Yeah, this
even though
comparison
the
should-
language says unit.
Well, the table also shows maximum when it means minimum because it's showing it throughout all zoning districts. So it's, the context of it.
Is there a reason 9 is not included in the requests?
Oh, it might just be on the other page.
Well, it's just.
Oh, it's the order that the applications came in the system,
Okay.
so somebody probably submitted in between.
Okay,
As
because I
these
see it
applications
is
are
on the, it's discussed, on page 2, further down.
And it should be noted on page 9 that the staff has recommended that we deny 299 Hamilton, 297 Hamilton, and 295 Hamilton. So 299 and 295 were the ones that were really, really small.
What are your thoughts about that?
Well, like I said, we did look at those small units and turning them into duplexes. Well, it depends on what you mean by deny, because by the current code, those 2 buildings would have to be 1 unit. And that's a 3-story building, and trying to rent that as a 1 unit is gonna be pretty difficult. And so, now, so I don't know if it means that having 3 units is bad, is not acceptable, but 2 units, you're still not at that 750, because what we did look at was having a basement apartment as a studio, and then the first and second floor was a duplex. The client or the applicant didn't like it he ran the economic numbers and thought it wasn't working out for him, so that's why we were trying for this. It's one of those things where the 3 studios are really tiny, but the duplex actually comes out to be a really nice, high rent building, because it's a pretty good size, so high rent unit, so.
if for the two smallest properties, if they were being rented as a, like, as one, as a whole, right, like as the building, does that meet the code?
And
That
well,
still doesn't.
I guess if the whole building is one unit, so someone's renting the basement, first and second floor,
Then yes,
it does.
but if you split basement and first and second is what you were saying, then it doesn't.
It still doesn't. If you have like a, like the typical house in downtown Albany, they rent the basement and they live upstairs. Well, that, if you're gonna follow this code, that won't work in that instance.
And then for the 299, which has an extra floor, did you consider doing two duplexes, I guess?
I don't remember if we did do that scenario, we might have. Yeah, and that one, if I'm doing my math right, 2 units does fall within that 750, but I think economically that was a hardship for the applicant.
Yeah, the ground floor is really large on 299.
Yeah.
Like,
And I think it was kind of the problem was disproportionate, because then somebody has, whatever. I actually think we looked at, if I remember correctly, a 1 bedroom on the ground floor, a duplex between the first and second, and then the studio on the third. I think that was one of the scenarios we ran. But it still wouldn't meet the 750 requirement if you do that. It gets better, but.
Because, by code, we're required to grant the most minimal variance necessary to achieve the goal. And rating, the second criteria is making sure alternatives have been considered to the granting of the variance. So I think that's why we're kind of talking through kind of all those. Yeah. And I think, when you're looking at examples for the character of the neighborhood of other smaller units in the neighborhood, I think you could also tie that to the substantiality, which is the third criteria we look at. Which staff provided us calculations was the percent of variance requested for each application, which I guess range from 35 or 56% variance from what the code requires for 297 to 2.3% variance for 307.
Yeah, that makes sense, because they get bigger as they go up the hill.
So the other two criteria are the final criteria is impact to the environment. You kind of talked about, are you changing anything for the are you connecting the parking lots? Is it currently
They're already
connected?
all connected,
It's
because
all
when it was a
connected.
business and offices, they had to provide
So
parking.
you're not changing
We're not
any
changing
of
any
it
of that.
in the back.
No.
And so most of what it is expected is all the work inside.
Yeah, I mean, there is repairs, like one of the stoop is falling down and the handrail, so there's stuff on the exterior. It's more on the repair end of things, but everything is primarily focusing on the inside. And it's primarily just adding some partitions and the plumbing and stuff that you need for bathrooms and kitchens.
I guess just a thought still thinking through everything we've been discussing about the proposal. I feel like one of the things you mentioned as an explanation of why some of the units end up having to be smaller is that how the staircases in the smaller buildings are set up. Since you're doing, I would say, fairly extensive work inside the buildings, it might be worth for you to add to the application any information you may be able to have about whether or not it's feasible, as part of like alternatives considered, to change the staircase to give more space to the units, like greatly.
If the client decides to do historic tax credits, we will not be able to change these historic staircases. They are a major character defining feature of the building, even when they're a pain in the ass. But, so it's a trade-off on that, so I can't answer that because maybe they're like, well, if we can get all these units, then the economics work versus getting a tax credit. That's kind of not my call on that. But I can tell you, if they do go through the HTC route, then they do look at the interiors and won't let us change any character defining features.
And the staircases are in good.
They're one of the only few things that is really, well, the buildings up the hill on 307 and 305, actually really intact with all their plaster moldings and everything. Those other buildings lower that were gutted for the offices, there's the only thing that's really left is the staircases, unfortunately.
Do you know if your client would move forward if half the project were approved and the other half were denied?
I have no idea. Yeah, because again, that comes down to the economics of it, and they have to run their numbers, so.
I was just thinking that, Serena. I was like, did they still go forward? Because that's a major consideration.
Don't know. Again, this is one reason why they're doing it as part of their due diligence for buying the properties. Because as an architect that does work in here, many times one of my clients buys a building, says, oh, I want to do this. Well, you should have talked to me before you bought the building, because as soon as you change this, you lose your grandfather clause, and now you're not, and sometimes I'm like, you're never going to get a variance for whatever you want to do. So in this particular case, I'm glad they called me before buying the properties or in contract.
Yeah, I think you're like, I think for me, there's definitely additional information that's needed to supplement the application. I would recommend reaching out to the neighborhood association, potentially to that one property that's in the middle. If they're not opposed to the project, then that would be good to know. And I think it would be a good neighborly thing to do anyway, to reach out to them since you're surrounding their property with these projects. There's another, I guess like the notice obligation, like they're on notice from the meeting, but, but yeah, the neighborhood association, talking to them about it. And then, yeah, like I said before, the, kind of getting more deep into the character of the neighborhood on like examples. And I think maybe getting a bit deeper on like those alternatives considered. I think, and I don't know, Anna, if you want to explain a bit more like the recommendation from staff, but I assume that a lot of it is due to the substantiality of certain of the requests. But so I don't want to speak for you and put you on the spot, but I think if you fleshed out a bit more alternatives considered character of the neighborhood, it would potentially help your application.
And is that specifically related to like the smaller buildings? Because, we do
I mean, I think,
issues with the
yeah,
bigger
I think
buildings.
it's harder to consider the variances on the bigger asks.
Right.
So, but, what the law requires us to do is, one, grant the most minimal variance possible to achieve the goal, and to balance out the 5 factors, right? They're not, unlike for a use variance, they're not cumulative. So although there's a strong negative impact on some of the variances as to the substantiality of the request for the bigger requests, i.e. for the smaller buildings, I guess you could balance that
They're all
out,
separate applications technically.
Yeah.
So,
but you could balance that out with potentially, I think, fleshing out a bit more the character of the neighborhood and fleshing out, why no other alternatives function for those properties. Like, I think, everything that's discussed here is on the record, so you don't necessarily need to paper everything, but, having supporting information about the staircase, that it can't be moved, that, any additional information as well about, just renting the whole property or doing the one unit and the other two units just doesn't work, and providing some supporting information to that should help
okay.
the application, I would think, but, I don't know if you want to add anything on that.
I would like to hear from staff, if possible, regarding your recommendation.
Alrighty, we do have a request for comment, do we want to do that first?
Let's hear from you first, and then we'll do comments.
Alright, so we kind of went over this, today's the first meeting, we're talking about 6 parcels. We're located in the mixed-use neighborhood edge zoning district, which is relevant because of the 750 square foot minimum for the dwelling units. As far as we know, the original buildings were built in the mid-1800s. There's one that's from the 1960s, I believe, and they were converted from residential to office spaces. Based on public tax records, it looks like the buildings are in good condition. Public utility connections already exist, and the basements are finished. And also from the tax records, as far as we can tell, it's been non-residential since at least 2013. But the residential history before that is a little murkier to get into. And then I also did want to note that the requested variances apply to the average square footage, like we were talking about. So any approval could result in changes to the specific floors, if that makes sense. They're just going based on the average of all the floors together. So that's something to consider too. They could conceivably go lower as long as they meet the average.
I see what you're saying.
So as far as the USDO regulations go, these would be considered, the proposed uses would be considered dwelling townhouse or dwelling multi-unit. So these both are permitted in the district, and there aren't any footnotes or anything that would conflict with turning them over into this use. As far as seeker goes, we have a type 2 action, so no further action is required. It was referred to the Albany County Planning Board, and they deferred to local consideration on all properties. They will eventually need to change a use permit, and then it is in a historic district, but that also means that any changes to the facade would have to go through a certificate of appropriateness approval. As far as I know, there was already 6 applications submitted and approved for the proposed work, and they'd have to go through that process again if anything changes to the proposed facade. This I just included. It's sometimes helpful to understand the district purpose. Also, there was previous questions about the intent of the district and why there was a density minimum set. So what we were able to find from our records is that the project committee of the zoning update in 2017 intended for the MU-NE along with MU-NC district to be moderate density, which allows for it to serve as a buffer zone between lower and higher density neighborhoods. So kind of comparing that into the neighborhood, this is just the screenshot of the block. As you can see, most of these properties are 0.05, they're the similar size, which is 0.05 acres. And then if you see the building footprints, I know it's a little tough, but they all essentially cover about half of the property. So generally speaking, it seems to be in keeping, especially since there are other higher mixed residential density buildings. Just from an initial count, there are on the same street, on the same side of the block, there are 3 2-unit buildings, 7 3-unit buildings, and 4 multi-unit. And then as far as environmental impacts go, they accounted for trash, and traffic. So snow removal would probably be another thing to add to that. And then, yeah, as far as internal changes to the buildings, it's likely going to have a low impact. So for the surrounding neighborhood, I think it's also important to mention that we have 3 other zoning districts within 250 feet of the project sites. So here you can see this is the 250 feet buffer, and these are all the properties that get notified with the legal noticing letters. Oh yeah, and so these are also the district purposes for each of the surrounding ones. I don't know if you guys want to get too much into that, but I think the important thing is that MUCI does not have a minimum. RM does have the same minimum, and RT doesn't have a minimum as long as you have 1 unit per floor. This is one of the footnotes, which is why it's weird. Residential buildings are allowed to be up to 3 units as long as each unit has its own story.
Which is weird, what if you have a four unit? Or for 4-floor building, which does happen.
RT, which would not be allowed. It's a max of 3 units. Townhouse.
But they are, anyway, never mind.
Well, I think that's, if they're in there, that's an existing grandfather clause. You're not gonna be able to build a new one.
Yeah.
We've had issues where people had an attic and they wanted to convert it, and we're like, you can't, because now you're 4 stories, so, yeah. And there's also a building code issue. Once you get that high, you have to sprinkle the residential building too, so there's a lot of things that screw that up, so.
Right, and we were talking about base kind of estimates for what would be considered. This is the 2025 Housing and Community Renewal Design Guidelines. So I just went in screenshots for studio dwelling unit, 1 bedroom and 2 bedroom. You can see it outside of New York City, they recommend 400 to 600 for studios, 600 to 775 for 1 bedroom. And just for extra context.
Do you, sorry, making you pause for a second, do you anticipate, I guess, any other concerns with the historic committee that has to approve the tax credit and stuff like that on the smaller size of the smaller
Oh, they
studios?
don't care
They
about
don't
that.
care.
Yeah, so here I just broke out the measure of the variance, which is literally just how far away the proposal is from what's permitted. So as you can see, it ranges from 2.3% up to 34, 35, I think that's correct actually. Sorry. And then I also considered the magnitude of the variance. Technically speaking, we could get way more statistical about like making this actually reflective. I think this is just more of like a snapshot, but what I did was compare the number of units proposed for each building. And then here's the dwelling GFA that they're proposing for the variances. And then this is what would be permitted. So they are proposing 4 units, which under the code would be times 750. So it ends up with this. So this is what would technically be permitted for the buildings. So then if you just, or this is the difference, and just compare these two. So this is essentially how much we're like losing out on GFA, or how much they're requesting not to include.
And I think, this PowerPoint is, and the staff notes are available after the meeting. But again, going back to, I think it'd be helpful to address some of these points and how, he's Kunal just phrased it as this is what is lost. But from what I'm hearing you say, there's nothing to be, there's no way of gaining that. Like the square footage cannot be gained.
I mean, the only way you're gonna do that is additions, and we can't do that because of the individual properties and the property boundaries. Then we have to go through the HRC, which is gonna be tax credits. They can't get tax credits for additions, so all that work would be, they wouldn't be getting credit for that, and also that takes away our parking. The only way we can do that is to go out into the back, and it's pretty expensive. That causes a lot of problems.
Right, because you are using all the space available in the existing building.
Yeah.
And now does that make sense what we?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, the building is what it is, it's just
Yeah.
kind of, this is how the numbers break down.
Yeah, and
Um,
this is, a helpful breakdown, but, so just
Yeah, so
wanting
like-
to put it in context.
Yeah, so if you were gonna build a new building out here and you had 4 units, you had to make sure the building was at least 3,000 square feet to meet code, yeah.
Yeah, so given those factors,
And wait, just pause one more second. So I guess going back to the concept that the way this variants are proposed, which is also based on how the city's department has been interpreting the requirement, even though it's stated as a per unit requirement, the variances are currently proposed and set up as an average per unit for the building. And so, now I just lost my train of thought. Those numbers on this table here are about the building's square footage, not each unit. And
no,
so,
sorry, this is for the dwelling.
yeah,
So this doesn't include
Oh.
like hallways that
Yeah.
are for each unit. This is literally just what is regulated by the code, which is the dwelling itself.
yeah, so it's the total for the building, right?
Well, then you got to figure.
These are
It's
all-
the total for example, for 307, it's the total of the 4 dwellings for
Yes.
that building.
So if they get the variance and they're approved for 4 units, and they do it in the plans that they submit, this is the square footage that they would have for 307, and this is what they would have for.
Yeah, and so I think we were talking and asking information about like the smaller, specific units, but I guess those are specific units. I think there's a point to be made that although there are specific units that are quite small, the way the regulation and the variances are set up is looking at the building as a whole, not at each unit individually. But, okay.
So based on those factors, this was our interpretation, and as you had correctly guessed, the substantiality is the bigger catch, because of the percent change. So this is where the board might disagree with me, but I thought 15% would be kind of the cutoff. Maybe that's a bit more of a conservative estimate, but using that as the
Can I
cutoff
ask just where that 15% comes from?
is just personal stuff.
Okay, no, I mean, that's fine too, yeah.
Which is why I say it, so the
Yeah.
board might disagree. But at the very least, 50% is what would be considered, very substantial. So all of that to say, area variance 10, 11, and 12 would be considered substantial. 8 would be somewhat substantial, and then 6 I think these are, would be minimally substantial.
And it also says that under criteria 1 and 2.
Yeah, sorry, I think this should be, this is the number.
Okay.
So this is 22, it's all of these are like the majority.
The small ones, yeah.
Yes, so they're requesting the higher variance, which is why they would be somewhat more substantial. And then it's just, whether the board agrees with my interpretation.
Great, it sounds like you found sufficient, their submission regarding criteria 1 and 2, correct? Alternatives to sizing layout were considered, will have minimal impact to the surrounding neighborhood character.
That's also, all of these are up to your,
Right.
I guess how you look into it. So that's another thing where if, as Adriana requested, if the board would like to see more detailed information, that's totally within your.
Yeah, and I'm just saying based on the analysis that you're walking us through, that was something that you concluded, or based on your interpretation.
Right. don't have any other questions for you at this time. Process-wise, I don't know, give everyone a second if there's any other final questions for the applicant, but otherwise, you can sit back in the back of the, or in the room, and we'll hear public comments, and you get a rebuttal and public comment if you wish.
Okay, great, thank you.
So just level setting on public comment, we did receive, I guess, your written comment, Mr. McLaughlin. Sorry if I butchered your last name. Everyone but public officials get 3 minutes. It's time for public comment. I guess we'll start with you since you're signed up. If you would like to come up and just provide your public comment, that'd be great.
Sure. So, I'll read my letter. My name is Felton McLaughlin. I'm a city resident, live in the Buckingham Pond neighborhood, 180 Lenox Avenue. Full disclosure, I happen to be the listing agent here, so I do have a dog in the fight. I represent the seller of this portfolio. I also happen to be a property owner in the neighborhood. I own 2 historic townhouses on Lancaster Street, literally 3 blocks north of this location, same block. I fully support the applicant's plans to convert these mixed-use office retail buildings. There are no apartments in any of the buildings that we're talking about now. Mostly empty, primarily consist of obsolete office space. As a practicing commercial realtor, I'm keenly aware of the housing crisis afflicting Albany, and not just Albany, it's the entire nation. We desperately need more housing, and converting these mostly empty buildings into apartment is a no-brainer, in my opinion, and one of the best things we can do as a city to breathe new life into this neighborhood. To speak specifically about the 350 square foot concern that everyone has, my buildings on Lancaster, one of them is strictly studios. The floor plates are 900 square feet. Those studios, it's all studios on the upper floors, there's 6 of them. 6 units, 3 floors. They are never vacant. There's a lot of demand for small units in that neighborhood. I would say across the entire market. And the benefit to the tenants in the market is that it's a lower entry point price-wise. So my studios over on Lancaster rent for anywhere from $900 to some as much as $1,300 a month. But that compares with $1,500 to $1,700 for 1 bedrooms. Now, the benefit for the developer and for financing this kind of project is that those smaller units, even though it's a smaller rent, right, $900, $1,000, that averages out to about $3 per square foot per month. That's the metric that the bankers look at and developers look at. So it makes it a more profitable venture to allow smaller units. The developer is getting a maximum rent per square foot, even though the rents themselves are a lower price point for tenants in the marketplace. So that would be my pitch for saying yes to this area variance. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Anyone else would like to speak tonight on this project, the variances? No? Yeah, please come on up. And I forgot to ask, but you did, if you can just provide your name and address, or it doesn't have to be full address, but just an idea of where you live in Albany. Yeah.
Hi, my name is Griffin Vengraff. I rent apartment on Hamilton Street. I work at the state, so I know Hamilton Street very well. I don't really have anything super written down. I was happy to hear that it would be kind of historically represented. I think that makes Center Square really strong as an area. One of the most owner-occupied blocks in Albany is that kind of section. I know Hassan very well on Urban Aftermath, who's on the bottom floor of, I think it was 295, I believe. Hamilton Street.
I think it spans two buildings.
I think it might.
Yes, it does.
So just, having him get basically kicked out, and it was like, I kind of like that little commercial spot at the bottom. There's like a nice little bookstore. People kind of made it their routine. Like after work, they'd come in, see some books, talk to locals. So I guess I just wanted to voice as like someone who's very active in the community that there's some fun stuff there, and I don't want it to just be like all residential. Even though I do agree that we do need residential, just seeing that space kind of like go is a little bit sad for me. So I just hope that they consider like the neighborhood and what people really like in the neighborhood. And that's about it.
Thank you. Would you like to provide comments? Okay, sure. Yeah.
Hi, my name is Jen Bullington. I own a condo on Hudson Avenue, 252 Hudson. When I heard about this project, I was just a little concerned because the back of my unit, my house, is in the parking lot where all the residential people will be parking from Hamilton. So we have all this extra traffic coming in. It's only one driveway into this big parking area. It's already kind of dangerous. So that's my main concern with adding 21 more units, and they're all going to be parking in the back there. Also, this neighborhood is so busy with all the state workers. I'm afraid of all the congestion and traffic added with adding so many new units, because I know there's also a proposed residential building in that parking lot on Hamilton as well, across the street from these properties. So you're gonna add all these people with all these extra cars. It's just gonna be a little insane. So that's my main concern with this. And I also, like what that gentleman just said, it's really nice to have a few businesses in the neighborhood that we can walk to, not just all residential.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for taking the time. I don't know if you want to come up and, any rebuttal should be addressed to the board, but you're welcome to provide any comments.
And it's not really germane.
There's no one online, right? Just sorry.
No, it's okay. I don't know if any of this is germane to the actual variance request, but just to address the public comments. I don't know for sure, as the architect, what the end goal is, whether existing commercial tenants are staying or going, so that's kind of outside of my purview on that. And then the other thing I could say about the parking issue, maybe it's parking is not a problem now because a good portion of this block is empty with that business and the office being gone. So typically residential parking has a lot less impact than commercial parking. So if you're concerned about parking and traffic, what's the option? That you don't occupy those buildings? So it's unfortunately a problem that we have, that you gotta make room for cars. So that's my only comments on those two issues.
I think, listening to public comments and stuff, just some additional thoughts on I guess maybe for next meeting, kind of, if you can provide, the goal is residential for all the units. If you can just confirm that, and that, the owner is not looking at some kind of mixed use.
Okay, I mean, because that might, for all I know, that could change, I don't know.
Yeah, and I feel like earlier you mentioned that commercial, that you guys didn't think that commercial had like some, or at least commercial in the current state,
Oh, no,
and
no,
roads
I'm not
would
saying-
not be realistic.
Yeah,
And so
because-
like going back to like the criteria of alternatives considered, I think addressing that, leaving the buildings as they are and trying to rent the space as it is just not realistic in the current marketplace. But maybe because of the public comment, just also addressing.
Oh, and that, I wasn't specifically talking about the basement apartments, I was talking about how they're all combined into one floor plate. And because Felton would talk about, people don't want that type of office space anymore, they want Class A office space. And so it's actually really not great shape. So trying to keep that as in its current state of all commercial renting is a tough thing to market.
Yeah.
And like we talked about, we do have a housing crisis, and so these do lend themselves well to being put back on the rolls as viable, housing units.
And since you've mentioned the housing crisis again, has there been any discussion about affordable housing?
No, not that I'm aware of.
And then I also had a question about the recommendation regarding the neighborhood association. So this is for staff as well, just following up on Adriana's question. If the notice went out to the 250 feet radius, right, are applicants still expected to go directly to the neighborhood association if they theoretically already got the notice? Like, how does that work?
Legally, they're just required to do the noticing. So that's, depending on the project, it's the posting, the mailed letter, and the legal posting at the time. So any other work that they would be doing is either requested by the board or.
So I have a question. Do you guys reach out to the neighborhood associations when there's something like that?
Not unless asked.
Okay, no, I didn't know. Yeah, it did.
Not in the course of.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, agendas are posted and often at least somebody on the neighborhood association is
Okay.
signed up to get that.
Hamilton is Center Square.
Hudson Park.
Or it's Hudson Park.
Yeah, because I used to live right there, so, years ago.
I have a question for the planning staff. Is there any precedence for parking lot maintenance? I'm thinking about snow removal, safety, maybe even lighting, if it's a little dangerous back there. Just trying to avoid any easily avoidable conflicts in the back
Yeah.
parking lot. Like, do we have
Um,
precedence for
Well,
that?
there's no site plan review required, because it's just interior rehab. Obviously, the city does have something on the books that snow must be removed in 24 hours at the end of a storm. So occasionally, if something is really beyond the pale, then GGS will cite and clear.
And
the
lighting,
site owner.
just
but the lighting is
safety
not
to
part
and
of
from your car.
Yeah, we don't have any site plan
So,
review.
and I mean, I'm speaking out of turn, the thing you gotta be concerned about lighting is that we do have residential units too,
I
and
know,
you don't
I know.
want lighting. It's a balance, a tricky balance
I
of
know.
not disturbing the residents and also having enough.
But like also like
light.
safety too.
Yeah, exactly,
Like just,
so-
there's just some basic, totally get your point. Like I didn't see like, there wasn't any luminosity like on those site plans, like seeing what the lighting plan was.
Like the lots, or like, I just wanna, so, because I don't think I realized that until the public comment, that like, so the parking lot is accessed through Hudson.
Yep.
Like that weird,
There's
yeah,
a, we
which I've
see that,
seen, yeah,
where there's some parking cars there.
Yeah.
And it kind of meanders
Yeah.
through the whole area.
yeah.
That's a big parking lot.
Yeah.
I had no idea.
Well, there's it's shared by everyone,
Yeah.
so.
I drove past it like every day. I had no idea how big it was.
I mean,
But I
I definitely see
think-
the driveway and see how it's dangerous,
Well, I
but I guess.
think when this was fully occupied as offices, they probably had a lot of employees that used it. It's been a while since it's been occupied.
Does anybody know how long these buildings have been on the market? Out of curiosity.
Sure. We've had them on the market. We listed them, like the end of last summer. So,
Okay.
and the parking lot in the back, I mean, you're not gonna add parking to the street. I mean, there's literally about 30 parking spaces that come with these 7 buildings.
parking's an issue throughout the whole city.
Oh, yeah.
So it's not gonna create a burden on the street. I mean, I would think that would be viewed positively.
And how is the parking lot managed, do you know, like, I guess, who's responsible for the entrance to the parking lot and stuff like that? Is that
The
the
current
city?
owner is responsible.
The current owner, I mean,
The
since
seller.
it's shared,
The seller is currently maintaining that, plowing it, all of that. So that responsibility would fall on the shoulders of the new owner.
because they're the majority owner of the buildings surrounding the lot? Is it-
Well, the driveway that you saw on the street view and the parking that was kind of parallel going up the hill, that's all part of
His property.
Oh,
these
it's part of the
properties that are
property.
being conveyed.
So whether he owns all the parking, which I don't think he does, or will, he owns that part that connects it, right? Yeah.
The driveway and the parking going up the hill.
So it's kind of
The condos own the parking directly behind that building.
And then, so the city's responsibility takes over after the sidewalk, where it connects to the street?
No, the city's not responsible for clearing sidewalks, that's
No,
on the
no,
property
I know,
owner.
like, so yeah, the city's only responsible for the street and has no responsibility as to the driveway. I think hearing that, I would highly recommend you get in touch with the city engineer as well, the traffic city engineer, Bill Trudeau, and kind of pull him into this. I would recommend you do it, but,
In what regards? Because this is private
Yeah.
driveway, and what would the city have
I
anything to
guess-
say about a private driveway?
I guess to have a discussion with him about the safety concern raised by the community that we just heard on public comment tonight.
Okay, I'm not sure the city will even weigh in on something like that in a private lot.
I would say because it's existing, again, it's not going through site plan review, if it
Right.
was going through site plan review, it would go to traffic engineering, but there isn't any site plan review, it doesn't meet any of the thresholds. So we don't refer to other departments, it's just.
I think if we were making a change, we would, right?
You'd have to get a
Right.
right-of-way permit.
There be enough level of service change, 21 apartments in terms of that driveway in and out, because South Swan, I was double checking who owned the jurisdiction. I think it still might be, I think South Swan is still city
Yeah.
maintained, so.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's something worth maybe a brief conversation with Bill Trudeau in terms of level of service, specifically with the driveway.
But we're not changing the amount of parking spots.
No, but like it's been
And
vacant
so-
since last summer.
Yeah, but-
There's something, and there's
I
such
think it's
heavy
just a
foot
general
traffic.
suggestion.
Okay.
There's such heavy foot traffic. I did
I mean,
double.
what, like I said, what's better, that we put an office building back there and now every unit is filled and,
There's just a lot of them. That's, well, not a lot. There's
I'm just saying
a good
it's an
amount.
existing condition and it seems like we're not changing it, the amount of cars parking in there. And if you have a problem with the existing conditions, it's grandfathered to issue. And I don't think changing, typically, and I don't wanna speak, I'm an architect, I'm not an urban planner, but typically residentials have a lot lighter use than commercial use. Commercial use got people coming and going all day, residential you tend not to.
Bill might want to look at though, if you're gonna be marketing specifically for assembly members and people that are in and out, they're gonna be crossing a lot, and it's already a pretty tough area.
Well, they're gonna be walking a lot too.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like the crash, like I've run some of the numbers, I've looked some of the back, like who owns what.
And I think, I understand what you're saying about the fact that you're not changing anything. And like you're not increasing the number of cars. But as part of the variance, we do look at environmental impact of the project and the requested variances. And so, right, like, as part of that and as part of the balancing factors, there's no harm in looking at, is there anything that needs to be done or should be, or could be done? Not an obligation, but to ensure that this is a safe driveway for everyone to use. That's my
Good
thought.
to just like reach out and see if he's available for a brief conversation. If not, then you did
Okay.
your effort.
I think it's overstepping the bounds of this group, but
Well, this might also be a
I would-
refresher for Bill
Right.
Trudeau to double check and make sure that we have enough bike ped facilities there, but this is like what I do day in and day out. I think that they put in an RRFB, a rapid rectangular flashing beacon, not even a beg button, where you like literally beg to cross. There's not even that. So there's like some problems there, and it's just
what do
like,
you look at South Swan Street?
yeah, not even like,
Oh.
it's right, it's servicing and
that's-
protecting your potential customers.
Well, I used to live up
Like-
the street and I'd walk to work and have to cross that road
Yeah, I mean,
every morning.
the paint's fresh, the paint's fresh. Yeah, so I think that there's you can zoom in a little bit. Yeah, that's an RRFB, to the left. Yeah, so that's an RFB, that's MUTCD, that's standard. That's the Municipal Uniform Transportation Design Manual.
Yeah.
That's not, in my opinion, enough. I've
Because
had
all that
conversations with
does-
Bill about needing to
Right.
beef up.
All
It's
that
not, this
does
isn't
is just,
new,
all
this
this
is like, we
does,
need to do more as
right,
a
but all that
city.
does is just light up and then
That's all, that's all
you
you do.
still have
And
to
people
stop.
still don't even understand the stop. People blow through those
Yeah, there's
constantly,
no
and it's like,
signal light.
Yeah,
to
you're
stop.
supposed
I
to
do just want to
stop.
reiterate, this is outside the bounds
Yes,
of the consideration.
100%, but it's like
And
a
also
conversation for
say
Bill to
that some
on his
of our
radar.
proposed project that is proposed, we don't have applications, there is a proposal that's out there for the parking lot across the street that would incorporate actual
Oh,
traffic
really?
changes, and they would be required to make those if
Okay.
needed.
The other
It would be
project
a
that was
full site plan
mentioned?
review. Correct.
Well,
Because
not-
that does
not
fall
this
under the major
application.
site.
Yeah,
plan.
there's the project that was mentioned, that's also on the
Mentioned,
block.
we don't have an application for it. Yeah, at that parking.
Okay, that helps. Thank you.
Wonder if this goes through, I want Bill to take note that like, there's gonna be more foot traffic.
No, that's a good
And I
point.
wanna see
Yeah.
safety beefed up, like, this is part of a long-standing personal, like, we need to do more. And it's expensive, utilities, infrastructure is very expensive, and I get that.
Just one quick FYI, in that parking lot, half of it is owned by the Robinson Square apartment complex a little further up the hill. So those folks are already using that driveway coming in.
Yeah, there's other
so many
people using it.
I just
yeah.
want them to be safe, especially going, people fly down right trying to zip into 787.
Yeah, and no one is saying this is your, like, the owner's necessarily responsibility, but at the same time, you just said that they do own the parking lot, including the driveway, so I guess there is some responsibility.
Yeah, just because they own a portion of the parking lot that their property boundaries are on. They don't own the whole parking lot, but they do own that little sliver, whatever it's called there.
The driveway,
above,
I guess.
That with the driveway with the parking. Where there probably was a building there at one point.
Mhm.
Yeah, right there. Or they will if they purchase the property.
What's parcel 256, is that? One last thought and comment from me is, I guess, would the owner make some commitment, and I think, I mean, or I'm curious on getting feedback on if we were to grant all the variances, but conditioned that the smallest unit cannot be smaller than what's currently proposed, is there any concern with that? I guess, just food for thought.
I'm sorry, I don't understand.
So, like, to the point, I think planning staff earlier made a point that since the variants are set up per building, not per the units.
Right. Mhm.
If we grant the variances as they're currently proposed, technically you could decide to redo, once the variances are granted, you could split things up further somehow. Maybe does not make practical sense, but legally entertain the thing. You could potentially, I think, split up the buildings further and I guess make some of the units even smaller. So if we consider granting the variances, but conditioned that no unit can be smaller than the smallest units proposed currently, I guess, is there any concern with
I don't
that?
think so, and maybe the question is, can you say we're granting a variance at this percentage? You know, so like you have that percentage chart, that they can't go any lower or something like that, I don't know.
Yeah,
That's
With the
more of
gross
a,
floor area, the variance would be granted for the average gross floor area. So
right, it's
I
not
don't
a
know how you
blanket
could
variance,
grant
it's saying you can
I don't know how
have,
you could get lower than that.
so we can't go
You
lower.
have to- If you reduce the apartments more, then it would reduce the gross floor area per square per unit.
Unless you like divided them up or something.
But then each unit would be smaller and the average would be lower.
Oh, because it's an average
Yeah,
of all the units. Okay.
yeah, so if you created more, the average would decrease and it wouldn't meet the variance.
Yeah, it's not a blanket variance that you can, it's,
Okay.
you can only go.
I got confused because it seemed like you were saying you could go lower.
Well, I feel like you could condition it. No, like if there's,
I think that's a
Right,
good question, I'm not
what-
sure if we do that. Because again, it runs with the land, right, so, you know, if you granted it, the contract fell through, someone else could come and do that exact same thing. If you meet the variance.
Can we just look at that, like, for next meeting, like staff and legal, just, I guess I just want to make sure that what you're saying is correct. And I'll think about it, definitely, too, but that, like, if we grant the variances as currently proposed, no units can be smaller than what's currently proposed. Okay. Again. I don't have anything to do.
Are we tabling? Should we motion to tables, since it sounds like we're requesting additional information from you? That's what it sounds like.
I mean, that'd be my recommendation, but it,
Yeah, so I move to table these projects.
I second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So we'll see you next
So,
week.
then can I ask a process question? So does that mean, do I have to then submit something by the deadline for next meeting, or just submit it whenever? You know, am I back in the process of that?
There's much more wiggle room than like the
Okay.
actual application.
Yeah, okay, so we'll get the information and just
Yeah.
submit it to you guys, as long as it's a certain amount of time before the
Yeah.
meeting, so we
I
can.
think probably by the end of the week, we'd communicate the specific requests.
Oh, great.
To, you know, you and Sophia or whoever would bring them up and give a general timeline of when we need that back.
Okay.
To be on the agenda.
Good, okay. That
And
makes
I
sense.
mean, everything we said are suggestions, recommendation. You
No, I
can
know.
choose to show up and with the exact thing and saying, we ignored you, but then you're likely getting, you know, certain decisions based on.
Right. But like I said, I don't make those decisions.
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
So, I'm just the communicator, so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
we're just making suggestions.
All right, well, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
To
Adjourn?
Yeah, motion to adjourn. Second.
All in favor?